Many creators have already explained Tarkov's audio, but I came to a conclusion that no one seems to be talking about. I've tested this on all common PvP spots where vertical audio matters, and I'll show you all the testing after the explanation. Forgive me if I'm wrong, and this is already well known. It's a new discovery to me, and I haven't found a video talking about it. So what we know from other creators is that there are occlusion zones. Each floor is its own occlusion zone, and sometimes you can't hear below you, which isn't entirely true. You can always hear below you, but sometimes your audio gets blocked. I'll explain later. Okay, back to what's commonly known. To hear the floor below you, you will have to prone so that your ears are touching the occlusion zone below. This works, but only in some buildings. Moving on to my explanation. I like explaining things in a way where a 5-year-old can understand, so instead of occlusion zones, we'll call them filters, because they filter and alter sound. There are two types of filters in the game: thin filters and thick filters. Thin filters are usually walls, glass panels, whatever dampens audio slightly, and thick filters dampen audio by a lot, which are usually floors and staircases. You can imagine the entire occlusion zone being one thick filter between you and the floor below you. Now here comes what I discovered. Audio can pass through any amount of thin filters and it won't dampen any further than the first penetration, but you can only hear sound pass through a single thick filter. So let's say there's both a thin filter and a thick filter, which in this case it would be a wall and a floor. Between you and the sound source, you'll have zero audio. Let's use dorms as an example. I'm standing one floor above and I'll have my other account run below me. Vertical audio is a little too quiet when the sound source is underneath you, so I'll have to boost the volume. But it technically works. Now as soon as I move to a spot where there's something else in addition to the floor between us, I get zero audio. You may have heard two steps during each run through, and that's because there's only a thick filter separating us when the hallways intersect. The same thing happens to audio above you too. It's loud enough so we don't need a volume boost. Listen to what happens when I duck into a room. Footsteps are only heard as our runner crosses the doorway. This is because there's no filter in the doorway. This is consistent throughout almost all buildings in Tarkov. There are anomalies like both bishops and pawns on reserve, where for some reason Nikita decided to use thin filters for floors. I'll demonstrate this in the uncut testing video. Back to dorms, let's use Sir Hans Vader's video for a third-party unbiased example. He claims that there's no audio when you run down a hallway after a third floor balcony drop to second floor flank. Let's watch his clip. You hear that? The footstep audio played when the flanker is directly underneath our defender. We didn't get any audio until the flanker is in this position, because from the defender's angle, you have the thick filter, which is the floor, and the corner of this wall, which is the thin filter. Where they intersect, audio will not play, which is why the footsteps start coming in after a runner has cleared the wall. Let's reenact this situation in a custom game. I shot out all the lights because the lights make an electrical noise and it's harder to hear. So from this angle, which is the angle he was holding, my results were the same. Because there are two filters and one of them is a thick filter, I can't hear him running down the hallway. But if I step out into my hallway, so it's just the thick filter and no other filters, I do get vertical audio. I can hear him run up and down the hallway. It's very faint, but it's there. Now knowing this explains why staircase audio is so scuffed. Because you can be halfway up the staircase and your head is already peeking over into the next floor. Which means between your ears and the audio source, there's an invisible thick filter and a thin filter, which are the walls around the doorframe leading to the staircase. This is the cause for staircase audio. Okay, let's move on to prone audio. Going back to the intro clip, if I were to be standing in this position, I won't be able to hear him to my right in the hallway because there are walls and the floor between me and our target. That's two filters, one of them being thick. Proning clips my head into the filter below me, so I'll be able to hear audio as if I was downstairs. That's why the sprinting was so loud and clear. This isn't as straightforward as you think though. Let's say I'm proned in a room. There's a radius around my character where I'll hear the filter on my floor. Past this radius is where I'll hear audio as if I'm standing on the floor below. So if you're prone abusing and you hear someone clearly approach your Z axis, but all of a sudden it gets a lot quieter, then it's very likely they're directly below you. Prone audio doesn't always work. It heavily depends on which building you're in. I'm going to cover most buildings where vertical audio matters in PvP, starting with reserve. Okay, I'm editing right now and there's going to be a slight change of plans. I'm going to use a diagram for every building, and I'll have a 2.5 hour long video which will be uploaded unlisted, so if you want proof, you can visit that video. It's just too long and too much to cut into this video coherently. If you like what I do, be sure to sub, bell, like, comment. You can find me on Twitch here. Discord link will be in the description and comments. Thanks for watching. Okay, starting with the medical bishop, everything is thin filtered. You can hear from top floor all the way into basement. The same goes for GPU drop bishop. The thing with thin filters is that you can hear a maximum of 2 floors up and 2 floors down. So when it comes to pawns, you can't actually hear the whole building. North pawn is a little different. There's a bunch of crap in the middle of the building that acts as a thick filter. You can go in there and see for yourself. There's a bunch of sandbags or whatever, and it's consistent throughout the entire building. It makes the whole middle section one big thick filter. For dome, the floors are thick filtered and they're pronable. Same goes for king and the knights. Everything is pronable. Okay, on to customs. We already talked a lot about dorms throughout the video and they're both pronable. Crack house, just like dorms, you can prone abuse. For fortress, the floors aren't prone abusable because it's too high up. For resort, all the floors are thick filters including admin, and they're all prone abusable. There's several things you have to watch out for in resort. These holes don't help too much for audio. If you have line of sight, the filtered audio will cut into unfiltered as soon as you see their feet, which isn't too helpful, but the holes themselves are great for flanking. What you really have to watch out for are the S-turns here. Every single one of those corners is a thin filter, so if there's an elevation difference between you and your enemy, you'll hear audio cut in and out when they turn around the corners. That's how I was able to drop without them knowing in the intro clip. He probably didn't hear me until it was too late. Factory offices area is really weird. Everything is thin filtered, including both staircases. The only things that are thick filtered are the offices themselves on 3rd. Now for labs, each floor is a thick filter. It's a common misconception that these floors are pronable. They are not. Proning does not help me here below me whatsoever. I've tested this extensively. Now the tents, they're thin filtered. So if you're anywhere inside the tent area, you will not be able to hear below or above you.